Today, you're going to learn about learning English in a state of flow. Now, this is sometimes called being in the zone. You might have heard this before, to be in the zone. So we're going to talk about what this means and why it's important when it comes to improving your English level and enjoying the journey to fluency, to make it enjoyable for you. I'll also have some great resources for you as well, so that you can start becoming a little less stressed about learning English and make it more enjoyable. But before we get into that, welcome to you. My name is Jack from tofluency.com. It is 2022. It's January. So happy New Year to you if you're listening to this in the new year, or just happy whatever day it is, whenever you are listening to this. We release a new English lesson every Thursday on YouTube and on podcast apps. So if you haven't done so already, just click that subscribe button so that you don't miss a lesson. And if there's a notification bell like there is on YouTube, click that as well. And also know that I have a free gift for you. It's called the 5-Step Plan for English Fluency. It's a book that goes through 5 steps so that you can improve your English and reach the level you want to reach. So check that out in the description. And all the resources from this lesson will be in the description too. To lead up to the topic today, I want to talk about a quick story and tell you a quick story from somebody called Derek Sivers. And he wrote an article which you can listen to as well. I'll leave a link to that. And it's called Relax for the Same Result. And it talks about how he used to do this bike path and ride his bike on this bike path. And it was for about 7 miles. And what he did was he went on a weekend when it was empty. And he'd do this every weekend, or sometimes a few times a week. And he would go as fast as he could. So you know that state you're in where you're really going, okay, you're going using all that energy and you're thinking, how fast can I go? And your body is tense and you're trying your hardest to go as fast as you can. And he says in the article, I'd finish exhausted, and look at the time, 43 minutes every time. Maybe a minute more on a really windy day, but basically always 43 minutes. So he would always have the same time when he was doing this bike race, when he was on his path. And he says after a few months, he wasn't feeling as enthusiastic or excited about the bike ride, because every time you're trying your hardest and you're getting the same time, you're not seeing any progress. So he said one day he decided to do it, but just chill, to take it easy, not super slow, but not really forcing yourself to go as fast as he wanted to go. And he says that he was relaxed and smiling and looking around and barely giving it any effort, which means he wasn't really trying his hardest to get the fast time again. And he says that he enjoyed this because he saw some dolphins in the water, he saw a pelican, and it was just a much more enjoyable experience for him. And then he looked at the time at the end of the race and it was 45 minutes. So normally when he goes really fast and is intensely riding his bike, it takes 43. But on this occasion, when he just felt like he was really relaxed and wasn't putting in as much effort, it was 45 minutes. And that's why he says you can relax for basically the same result. Now, there are certain things in life where this works, where it doesn't work. But the idea here is that instead of being really intense and not enjoying it, he just took his time and relaxed and more or less got the same result from this. And I'm sure that in the future, if he relaxes again, but maybe puts in a little bit more effort, but just has that state of flow, that feeling of, okay, I'm doing my best here, but I'm not stressed about it, then he will get roughly the same time. And I think this is important because I also think there are certain things in life that you do where if you just relaxed and enjoyed it, you would actually get better results. And I think learning English is one of those things where if you enjoy the experience, where you feel like you're in a state of flow or in the zone, then you're going to internalize more English. Now, in the past, I've talked about flow when it comes to using the correct grammar. So when you are speaking and everything just flows, where you're using the right phrases, you're using the correct grammar, you're not thinking about the rules of English and vocabulary items. Instead, it's just happening. You're talking and it's working and it just feels natural. Well, today I want to focus on how you can implement and introduce more of that into your daily English learning. And to give this a go for the start of the new year or whenever you are listening to this, to try and think about how can I introduce some of this more into what I do. And when I was researching this topic and just getting some more information on it, I came across an article on the BBC and it talks about this state of flow and getting into the zone. And I'll just read a couple of paragraphs for you. Again, the link will be in the description. Now, before we talk about how to get into the zone, it says here that the benefits of being in the zone stretch beyond the experience itself, which means there are additional benefits than just having that experience of being in the zone. And it says flow is associated with subjective well-being, satisfaction with life, and general happiness. So when you have this feeling of flow in your life, then you feel better, you feel more satisfied, and you're generally more happy. It also says at work, it's linked to productivity, motivation, and company loyalty. And this is what we're talking about here with languages, because when you're learning a language, it will be linked to productivity and motivation. And these two things are really important because to be productive with your learning means that you're learning more at a faster rate. But if you're motivated, it also means you're going to continue learning for a longer time. And this is a big part of learning a language. You need to be motivated throughout your time learning the language in order to continue doing it, in order to stay consistent. Now, this next point is really important. But first, it does say, avoid noisy environments and opportunity for interruptions. So that's just the first thing we need to know, that to create these conditions to get into this zone, this flow state where things are just happening naturally for you, you need to avoid noisy environments and any opportunity for interruptions. Because if you're in the zone and then there's lots of noise or people interrupt you, then it's difficult to stay in that zone. Now, I think this next point is so important, and it actually links to the input hypothesis, which we've talked about in the past. It says here, the activity makes a difference too. We need to engage in activities that are meaningful to us, that we find challenging, and for which we feel that we have the skills required to come out as winners. Okay, meaningful, challenging, but we can win. Which is exactly what the input hypothesis by Dr. Stephen Krashen talks about, where we need to focus on getting resources. For example, read books that are interesting to us, that are meaningful. So we need to do things that are meaningful, that have meaning. But we also need to find them challenging. At the same time, we need to be able to win. We need to be able to do these activities and come out and complete them. So when you find resources like a book, it's important to find one that's meaningful, that you enjoy, that's interesting to you, one that you can understand, but also one that is a little bit challenging so that you can learn new things. Because if you just got a book that was far too easy, then you're not going to be in this state of flow because you're not engaged with the challenge. But if you find something that you can understand, but also where you're learning new words and phrases, this is where you're going to be in the zone when it comes to learning. And I'm sure you can think back to times when you have been in the zone when learning English and other times when you haven't. So let's say you put on a movie and you thought, okay, this movie in English is going to be great. People have talked about it. It's got all these Oscar awards and I'm going to enjoy it. But then you start watching the movie and you can't understand what they're saying. You don't understand the story. You don't understand what's happening. You're not following the movie. In those situations, it doesn't feel good. You're not in that state of flow where you're enjoying the experience and following along with the movie. Instead, you feel frustrated, annoyed. You're thinking about, I wish I had a higher level. My English is not good enough, etc. All these negative emotions and thoughts that you have. On the other hand, I'm sure you've had an experience where you had a conversation with somebody in English and it just works. You understand what they said. You could speak. They weren't using the type of English that was too challenging for you. Instead, you had this natural conversation. Or another time when you started a movie in English and people talked about it and you could understand it. Maybe you had an idea of what the storyline was. Maybe the English they used in this movie was more understandable and it felt great. And at the same time, you were challenged because there were new words and phrases that people used. You didn't understand everything they said, but you understood enough of it to come out of that movie and think, okay, that was good. That felt good. Or maybe this was a podcast, one of my podcasts, or a TV show, or something like that, where you'd come out of this experience thinking, I was in the zone. I was flowing with that. I could understand what was happening. And just like Derek Sivers did with his bike, where he made the experience more enjoyable and he got the same result. When it comes to learning English, I think if you have more experiences like this, then you're going to learn more. You are more open to the language. You're in a better state of mind. You're more productive, like we talked about before. You're more motivated. You're going to get more context for your learning too. So let's now talk about some practical ways that you can find this state of flow. And we'll talk about this in terms of the different skills of learning English. We'll start with listening, okay? Now, I get a lot of comments on my YouTube channel. Two types of comments. The first one is, wow, I really like your podcast because I could understand you. I could understand what I was listening to. It was great. I had a good feeling. And I think it's because I use a type of language that people can understand and talk about topics that a lot of learners can understand as well. And people also talk about the way I pronounce words to say it's very clear, which is great. But at the same time, I also get comments saying, I can understand your podcast, but when it comes to a movie, I can't understand it. It's too difficult for me. Or, are you really speaking like normal people speak? Because I can understand you, but I can't. I want to know if this is how people speak. And I think this is important because, both of these comments, because when it comes to learning English again, it's important to feel that state of flow and to constantly improve your listening skills. And you can only do this if you understand the general topic of what is being said. And this goes back again to the input hypothesis. And I'll leave a link to this in the description where you find resources that are suitable for your level. So when it comes to listening, find things that you enjoy, that are suitable for your level, and also challenge you a little bit. Because if you just started listening to a podcast now that was not understandable at all, it brings about those negative emotions, that stress, you're not in the flow, you're not learning. But if you find something that you can understand and that challenges you a little bit here and there, so there are new words and phrases, and just gives you that listening practice so you can get more time and more experience listening to things, then that is what we need to aim for. So find podcasts like mine, find other podcasts that you enjoy, and listen as much as possible. Now, when it comes to reading, I think graded readers are a fantastic way to learn English because you can read books, classic books, modern classics, any types of stories that have been written with the English learner in mind, so that you can build up your reading skills in a way where you're in the flow of learning English. And I'll leave a link to a friend of mine called Ollie Richards, who has short stories in English for beginners. And I'll look at some other links as well for intermediate learners as well, because he has short stories in English for intermediate learners so that you can expand your vocabulary in a way that makes sense to you. And I think these books as well come with the audio format, which means that you can listen and read at the same time. And then while you're looking at that, be sure to look at other things online too, so that you can find different books, graded readers, anything that works for you, your interests, and your level. Because it's not just about your level, it's all about what you find interesting. Now, it can also get in a state of flow with writing too. And one of the activities that I think that you should definitely try for this year or for whenever you're listening to this is writing, and specifically writing a journal where you document, you write down your thoughts, what you did yesterday, how you're feeling today, what you're going to do today and tomorrow. So in this way, you're using the past, the present, and the future, and you're writing down just things about what you're thinking about, what you have learned, what you did yesterday that was good, what you did yesterday that you didn't enjoy, what you are feeling today, what you're excited about, what you need to get done. And just doing this on a daily basis, on a consistent basis, and using a grammar app, again, I'll leave a link to in the description, which is going to correct your writing, not just your spelling, but your grammar. It's such a great tool. Again, I'll leave a link to that in the description. By doing that, you're going to get in this flow state every day where you're writing more or less the same thing a lot of the times. Because we have this life where we are on schedules and routines. So we go to work, let's say Monday to Friday. We do our activities in the evening. So you're writing similar things, but then you're also adding in different things as well. So you're in that state of flow when you're writing. Now, with something like writing and also speaking, which we'll talk about in a second, it might take you some time to get there. It might take some work to get there, where at first you're not quite in that state of flow. You're working hard, you're practicing, but you will get there in the end. Now, for speaking, I think there are two things you can do. And it's quite interesting because we're talking about flow today, but you're not always going to be in that state. And sometimes you need to work hard in order to get to that state. And I talked about this in one of my most popular podcasts where I said, sometimes we need to do the hard things, the things where we're really focused and it takes energy to do. And one of those things is working on the way we speak, the sounds of English, intonation, and your pronunciation in general. And this is where we can mimic native speakers or English speakers, mimic the way they produce sounds. And I won't talk about this too much, and I'll just leave a link again to the episode where I talked about this. But then the other way we can do this to get more in a state of flow with speaking is to speak with somebody on a one-to-one basis, someone who is patient, like a teacher or a language exchange partner, so that you can really just take your time and speak in a way where you're not feeling stressed about using the right words all the time, what other people think, etc. one where you are confident that you're able to express yourself in a way where somebody is going to help you and somebody is going to be patient with you. And one final thing on this that I think is really important before I summarize is that sometimes you just need to get started in order to find the flow state or some type of flow state. And some days it's going to be easier. Some days it's going to just naturally flow. Other days you might have to work harder to get there. But the idea with this is where you just get started with it and then you soon find yourself in this learning state. You can think about this in different ways. Like if you're going for a run, the hardest part is getting changed, putting your things on and doing the first 5 minutes. And then you notice after 5 minutes that, oh, I'm in a flow state now, where you're just running in this way where you don't feel tired, your muscles aren't hurting, you're not in your head thinking, oh God, I've got to do this run. Instead, it's just naturally happening. And we can do this with English learning too, where you start doing the mimic method or you're imitating English speakers. And at first, you're having to listen and really think about the way you speak. And then after a while, you're just mimicking and imitating the audio you're listening to in this flow state. So with certain tasks and just most things in life, at the start, it's difficult to get into this flow state, or it just doesn't occur naturally in the beginning. Instead, you've got to get started in order to find this flow state. And there's one more thing, I forgot about this, is that a lot of this is just making sure that you find it enjoyable, that you're not just in your head worried about what you're learning and trying to memorize things and force yourself to memorize things. Instead, you're just doing it. You're flowing with it. You're finding it enjoyable. And you can take that mind frame into learning English by thinking about, I'm going to listen to podcasts I like. I'm going to listen to podcasts I understand. I'm going to read books I like. I'm going to read books I understand. I'm going to talk to somebody who's just going to let me speak and correct me in the right way. I'm going to write down things that I enjoy writing. And then also know that when you introduce a challenge into it, but one that you can win, this is when you start really improving. So I would love to know your thoughts on this. So if there is a comment section on the platform you're listening on, then leave a comment below and tell me what you're going to do in order to find this flow state. And if you found this podcast interesting, let me know too. And then, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel or the podcast or both, because I release a new episode every Thursday. In 2022, we're going to have different types of episodes and bring different people onto the podcast. And if you really enjoyed it, then what you can do to help me is firstly, like it if there's a like button there. But then on every platform, there is a share button where you can copy the link and send it to a friend, or copy the link and put it on a social media site and tell people to join me on this podcast, because I would love to reach more people and help more people with their English learning. And before you go, why not listen or watch another one of my episodes or videos on the YouTube platform and continue learning English with me for some time. Okay, so I hope you found this useful. Again, if you did, please share it with a friend and I will speak to you soon. Okay, bye-bye for now.